Hey guys! Today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named Three Body Problem Season 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The drama begins with the desolate sky suddenly covered by a smooth, mirror-like membrane. A giant eye appeared on the membrane, staring down at humanity. At the same moment, screens all over the world displayed a single message: you are all bugs. The scene shifts to London, where several renowned physicists have passed away recently. An experienced detective is in charge of investigating these cases. At the crime scenes, they found strange suicide notes left by each physicist. These notes contained nothing but an endless string of decreasing countdown numbers. This bizarre incident can be traced back to the 1960s. In 1966 China, during the Cultural Revolution, many brilliant scientists were denounced as reactionaries. Among them was a renowned physics professor who was persecuted for introducing Einstein's theory of relativity and spreading imperialist theories like the Big Bang during his lectures. To save herself, the professor's wife betrayed him, accusing his academic work of being reactionary. As a result, the professor was brutally beaten to death by several Red Guards. After the mob dispersed, a young girl clung to the professor's lifeless body, crying. This girl was his daughter, named Wen. As her father took his last breath, Wen looked at the Red Guards with eyes full of hatred. A year later, Wen was sent by the state to work in the mountains in Inner Mongolia. There, the construction corps relentlessly felled trees, turning the once lush forest into a lifeless wasteland. Wen witnessed humanity's reckless destruction of the environment and remembered it well. One day, a journalist approached Wen. Like her, the journalist was disgusted by the rampant deforestation. He even lent her an English book titled Silent Spring, which discussed the impact of human actions on nature. This book brought Wen and the journalist closer, and they became lovers. During this time, Wen, who had been in the mountains for a long time, finally smiled for the first time. However, their happiness was short-lived. One day, the authorities discovered the foreign book and questioned Wen about it. Because it was in English, the book was considered forbidden. The authorities demanded that Wen confess, but she remained silent to protect the journalist. In contrast, the journalist, fearing for his own safety, never admitted that the book was his. As a result, Wen was arrested and imprisoned. Soon after, a military representative visited her. At first, she showed great concern for Wen, even bringing a heater during the cold days. But after a few kind words, she produced a document and asked Wen to sign it. Signing the document would allow her to return safely to the construction corps. Wen discovered that the document required her to testify that several scholars were spreading reactionary ideas. Knowing that these scholars, like her father, were innocent truth-seekers, Wen refused to sign. In response, the representative doused her with a bucket of cold water. In the freezing temperatures of the Northeast, this caused Wen to develop a high fever. When she woke up, Wen found herself in a base called Red Coast, greeted by the commissar and the chief engineer. They explained that the Red Coast base was a military base conducting top-secret research. Given her background in astrophysics from the university and her excellent papers on solar radiation, the base decided to give her a chance to redeem herself by becoming a researcher. The chief engineer warned Wen that once she entered the Red Coast base, she could never leave. Disillusioned with humanity and the outside world, Wen readily agreed to join the base. 3 months after joining the base, Wen witnessed a launch firsthand. As the launch commenced, thousands of birds from the mountain below took flight in unison, swarming towards the signal tower, only to fall dead moments later. This scene baffled Wen. Clearly, they weren't launching missiles or any conventional weapons, so what exactly were they launching? Upon the chief engineer's request, the authorities decided to reveal the true nature of the Red Coast project to Wen. However, through her observations, Wen had already pieced together most of the puzzle. She noted that the system's radiation could be adjusted, and the transmission frequencies were constantly changing. Wen deduced that the base was not a weapons testing facility. The chief engineer and the commissar confirmed her suspicions, admitting that they were designing and building a communication system hoping to contact extraterrestrial life. Wen had no idea that this quest for alien life at the base would change her life forever and alter the fate of humanity. Fast forward 50 years, and physicists around the world are dying under mysterious circumstances. Their suicide notes all contain strange countdown numbers. During the detective's investigation, another particle physicist, Vera, dies suddenly. Before her death, Vera posed a bizarre question to her colleague Saul, asking him if he believed in God. Saul shook his head immediately. As a scientist, he couldn't accept the existence of a deity. At the same time, two female scientists, Chen and Augie, were discussing a recent anomaly. A month ago, all the world's large particle accelerators started producing inexplicable random results. Chen explained to Augie that she had extensively verified that neither the code nor the hardware was at fault. The problem was global, making a hacker attack unlikely. Chen even suspected that these extreme anomalies might indicate that humanity's fundamental physical theories and laws were all wrong. Science itself could be teetering on the brink of collapse. As they talked, Chen received a call informing her of Vera's death. Despite differing opinions, none of them believed in God. If supernatural forces truly existed in the universe, then all of humanity's rational thought and scientific research would be baseless. They believed Vera couldn't cope with the abrupt halt of their experimental project. Due to the global particle accelerator issues, recent physics experiments had yielded meaningless results, forcing many labs to shut down. Vera's project was among them, leading her friends to think this might have driven her to despair. Among the five, only Chen doubted the official cause of Vera's death. After the funeral, Chen visited Vera's mother, hoping to find clues from Vera's last words. Vera's mother was none other than Wen, who had explored extraterrestrial life at the Red Coast base. Now elderly and frail, the defiance of her youth seemed worn away by time. When Chen asked her about Vera's final words, Wen handed her a helmet, saying her daughter often played this game. The helmet was metallic, shiny, and without any buttons or markings. Curious, Chen put on the helmet. Without any further action, the game immediately began. In the game, Chen found herself dressed in ancient attire, standing on a desolate land from millennia ago. Before her stood a pyramid-like palace. As she marveled at the sight, a massive sun rose from the horizon. The sun was so close that its burning rays turned into a sea of fire, engulfing the land and everything on it in an instant. Behind her, a desiccated corpse emerged from the ground. Terrified, Chen removed the helmet and exited the game. Meanwhile, the detective also had his suspicions about the helmet. Recently, the detective was investigating a series of scientist deaths. Following the clues, he traced them to an old man named Mike. Mike was a billionaire who had inherited an oil company from his father. Beyond that, there was little information available about him. He was a rather mysterious figure. It was suspected that the helmet might belong to Mike. This enigmatic man surprisingly appeared at Vera's funeral and exchanged a brief, silent glance with Vera's mother, Wen. Their eyes seemed to hold endless secrets. After leaving the funeral, the detective decided to follow and secretly photograph Mike. He saw Mike board a private jet and fly over the vast Atlantic Ocean, causing the detective's trail to go cold once again. During the detective's investigation, another member of the Oxford Five, Augie, encountered something strange. Recently, Augie had been seeing countdown numbers flashing before her eyes, no matter the time or place. These relentlessly decreasing numbers haunted her. While smoking outside a bar, a woman approached Augie and struck up a conversation. Feeling irritated, Augie wished the woman would get lost with her bullshit. To her shock, the woman mentioned the secret of the countdown numbers Augie had been seeing. Augie was stunned. The woman cryptically told her that time was running out and that to stop the countdown, Augie had to cease her ongoing research. Augie, the chief scientist at a nanotechnology company, was baffled that the woman knew this detail. Intrigued by the woman's identity, Augie listened as the woman told her to watch the sky at midnight. She said the entire universe would shine for Augie. Before leaving, the woman gave Augie a small, toy-like disc. Skeptical yet curious, Augie brought her friend Saul to an open field. As the clock struck midnight, they looked up at the sky and were instantly filled with shock. The sky above them flickered like a giant light bulb, just as the mysterious woman had described. Saul realized that the flickering stars might be a code. Comparing it with the disc from the woman, they discovered that the code was the same series of countdown numbers Augie had been seeing. The entire world, including the detective and the now-aged Wen, saw the flickering universe. Saul visited Wen to discuss the strange phenomenon. Oddly, although humanity saw the flickering night sky, a series of observation satellites didn't capture the event. Saul believed the flickering sky was a form of deep-fake technology. Wen didn't refute his claim, but simply asked who had created the deep fake. Saul didn't grasp the deeper meaning of her words. If the secrets of the universe were an unfathomable iceberg, Wen had glimpsed its tip 50 years ago. Back then, at the Red Coast base, researchers had sent messages into space, hoping to build a better life. After sending the messages, Wen would sit by the machine each day, listening for a response from the universe. But for a long time, all she heard was cosmic noise. Despite the lengthy wait, Wen firmly believed in the existence of advanced extraterrestrial life. She even surmised that the base hadn't received a reply because the transmission power was too low. Hearing this, the chief engineer was puzzled. With the current technology, the Red Coast base was already using the highest radio transmission power achievable on Earth. At Wen's request, the chief engineer took a risk to obtain astronomical data from an American scientist. Using this data and her own expertise, Wen devised a method to contact extraterrestrial beings. She theorized that the sun could reflect and amplify the electromagnetic radiation of nearby planets. In other words, using the sun as a giant antenna, they could send radio waves into the universe. Unexpectedly, the chief engineer stole Wen's idea and reported it to the commissar, who summoned Wen to discuss it and sternly criticized both of them. This is a groundbreaking nanotechnology. They created the world's thinnest nanofibers, only 1/3000th the diameter of a human hair, yet strong enough to cut through steel like it was butter. Despite this success, the persistent countdown continued to flash before Augie's eyes. Choosing to trust the mysterious woman's advice, Augie ordered the nanotechnology project to be shut down. As soon as the project ceased, the countdown vanished from Augie's sight. She breathed a sigh of relief. The detective approached Augie. During his investigation, the detective had been secretly protecting the Oxford Five, the group of scientists that included Augie. Surveillance footage revealed Augie talking to herself outside the bar. The mysterious woman who suggested stopping the nanotech research had inexplicably disappeared from the video. Fortunately, the detective didn't doubt Augie's account. He believed someone had used technology to erase the woman from the footage. The detective concluded that Augie's nanotechnology posed a threat to certain individuals. He also mentioned that other scientists had seen the countdown numbers as well. These scientists either halted their projects like Augie or met with untimely deaths shortly thereafter. This situation was already strange enough, but what followed was even more bizarre. Another member of the Oxford Five, Chen, continued to explore a magical game world using the special helmet. This time, Chen found herself in Civilization number 137 during the Shang Dynasty, encountering a diviner and his followers. On the diviner's advice, Chen changed her game ID to Copernicus. The diviner was on his way to the pyramid to meet the king, intending to reveal the solar motion laws. However, during their journey, a massive sun rose into the sky, instantly drying the land and withering all life. The diviner quickly hid under a boulder where a shadow provided temporary refuge from the sunlight. But the shadow could only shelter 2 people. Without hesitation, the diviner pushed his follower out. To Chen's astonishment, the follower miraculously dehydrated to save himself, turning from a full-bodied person into a shriveled skin in an instant. As the fierce sun retreated, the diviner rolled up the follower's skin like a scroll and explained the situation to the bewildered Chen. In the game world, there were 2 eras, the stable era and the chaotic era. In the stable era, planets orbited a single sun in a regular pattern, creating distinct seasons and a hospitable environment for human civilization. But in the chaotic era, the sun's movements were erratic, leading to extreme cold and heat, making it impossible for human civilization to thrive. To survive the harsh conditions of the chaotic era, humans had developed an automatic dehydration skill, rehydrating themselves when the stable era returned. Following the diviner, Chen reached the pyramid and met the legendary king. The diviner demonstrated his discovery of the sun's movement using the principles of yin and yang divination. According to his calculations, the chaotic era would last 8 days, followed by a stable era of 63 years. Chen cautioned the king that diviners' divination methods lacked scientific validity and that they should use the laws of physics to understand the world. However, the king didn't comprehend physics and merely ordered the dome to be opened. The sky above was calm and sunny, a rare occurrence in the stable era. Seeing this, the king immediately commanded that all dehydrated citizens be rehydrated, planning to revive the entire dynasty. At the king's command, the soldiers began retrieving the dehydrated human skins and tossing them into the water pools. As they soaked, the skins gradually rehydrated, forming bones and flesh until they became whole, living people. Within moments, the revived humans emerged from the pools in groups. Unexpectedly, the sun, which had been at a suitable distance, suddenly sped away. Seeing this, the king was the first to flee for his shitty life, followed by the newly revived citizens. Unfortunately, none could escape the impending catastrophe. Without the sun, the land was swiftly engulfed in severe cold, and everyone was instantly frozen to death. The sight left Chen profoundly shocked. Just then, a woman carrying a samurai sword told Chen that civilization number 137 was destroyed by the extreme cold. The good news was that Chen had proven that science is superior to mysticism. In the next level of the game, Chen would need to use science to save the world. As the woman finished speaking, Chen saw 3 suns appear in the game world, mysteriously aligning in a straight line. Unbeknownst to Chen, someone in the real world was controlling this game. After exiting the game, Chen couldn't shake off the experience. The game felt so real, as if it held a template for the real world. To investigate further, Chen invited Jack, one of the Oxford Five, to try the game. Curious, Jack put on the helmet and, like Chen, felt the world was too real to be just a game. As he became immersed, the woman with the samurai sword unexpectedly swung her blade at him because Jack hadn't been invited. After removing the helmet and seeing his head still intact, Jack let out a sigh of relief. Soon, Jack received a gift, a helmet identical to Chen's. After enjoying the game, Jack learned some bad news. Their friend Will, also one of the Oxford Five, had been diagnosed with cancer and had only a few months to live. Meanwhile, the detective was investigating a stellar flashing event and discovered that in 1977, a radio telescope at an American university dips via the sun, but the Red Coast base had received no reply from space. One day, while scouting a location for a new astronomical observation base, Wen visited a barren forest. Surprisingly, the once desolate area was now lush with saplings. An American man named Mike lived in a cabin in the woods. He told Wen that he had planted the saplings and was there to protect an endangered bird species. During their conversation, Wen sensed that Mike was not only an environmentalist, but also shared her deep-seated disdain for human nature's darker side. Additionally, Wen noticed the book Silent Spring in Mike's cabin that had profoundly influenced her life. Clearly, Mike might be a kindred spirit. To help Mike and the devastated nature, Wen argued to relocate the astronomical base. This proposal faced strong opposition from the chief engineer. Given the social context of the time, aiding an American would land Wen in unimaginable trouble. To persuade her to abandon the idea, the chief engineer brought up another crucial matter. A group of labor camp prisoners had been transferred nearby, including one of the Red Guards who had beaten Wen's father to death. Wen immediately sought out the girl, hoping for an apology. Now, the girl was a shadow of her former self. Yet, even in her diminished state, her first words to Wen were devoid of remorse, saying it's a new era now, and everything was settled. Wen finally understood that no one would ever repent. The times might have changed, but the malice in people's hearts remained unchanged. This encounter with the girl transformed Wen's disappointment in humanity into utter despair. It seemed the universe heard her inner cry. Shortly after, at the Red Coast base, Wen detected a signal from space with the highest level, indicating a message from an advanced extraterrestrial life form. Wen realized it was a response to the waves she had sent into space 8 years prior. She quickly deciphered the message, which began with 3 repeated lines, warning her not to answer. Below these lines, the sender claimed that he is a pacifist of this universe, and it is her civilization's fortune that he received the message first. He then warns her not to reply. If she does, people of his race will come, and her world will be conquered. Shocked by the message, Wen made a swift decision. Outside, the morning sun rose gently. Seizing the moment, Wen decisively activated the communication button, aimed the radar signal at the rising sun, and typed a single sentence according to the code protocol, inviting the aliens to come to Earth since Earth's civilization could not save itself, and she would help them take over this world. After typing the message, Wen resolutely pressed the send button. In that instant, the fate of all humanity and perhaps the entire universe was irrevocably altered by the light touch of Wen's fingertip. As Wen pressed the send button, nearly half a century had passed. Back to the present in the distant West, another physicist had chosen to die. The detective discovered that the physicist's safe contained a helmet identical to the ones Chen and Jack had. At that moment, the Oxford Five were chatting at Jack's house. Augie unexpectedly discovered Jack's helmet and questioned him about it. This led the 5 friends to discuss the helmet. Jack, naive as he was, thought the helmet was just for games. However, Saul suspected that the helmet might be some advanced technology beyond human explanation, possibly related to the recent star flashing and the countdown Augie encountered. Upon learning that both Jack and Chen had played the game, Augie, concerned for their safety, asked them to stay away from the game. Despite agreeing outwardly, both couldn't resist their curiosity and planned to delve deeper into the game. Chen remembered the swordswoman's words about using science to save the next civilization. This time, Chen decided to have Jack as her assistant. Together, they planned to enter the game and use their knowledge of physics to predict the appearance and duration of the next stable era. Because Chen had proven in the previous game that science was more reliable than mysticism, she was able to enter the second level of the game. They found themselves in medieval England. Chen was Copernicus this time, the founder of the heliocentric theory, while Jack's ID was the philosopher Francis Bacon. They entered a church where the Pope sat on a high chair, with Aristotle and Galileo standing below. Before Chen arrived, both believed a stable era was imminent. Chen shared her insights about the sun's patterns, explaining through physics that there were 3 suns forming a trinary star system. If a planet orbited one of these suns in a stable path, a stable era would occur. However, if another sun pulled the planet away, it would wander unpredictably between the 3 suns' gravitational pulls, leading to alternating extreme cold and heat, a chaotic era. The Pope dismissed Chen's explanation as nonsense and ordered her to be burned at the stake. As Chen was tied to the post, a massive fire erupted outside the church. A rider burst into the hall, shouting that the world was ending. Indeed, 3 suns appeared in the sky, and the world plunged into a fiery inferno. The swordswoman reappeared, stating that civilization number 152 was doomed by the trinary alignment. However, by revealing the star system's structure, Chen and Jack advanced to the 3rd level of the game. In the real world, to protect the remaining scientists, the detective monitored all helmet users. The game's designer might be using it to screen and recruit certain individuals, such as those who could complete the game. These players were all top-notch scientists, but the detective couldn't fathom who the mastermind was or their purpose in recruiting these scientists. Similarly confused was Augie, who faced dissatisfaction from colleagues after halting a nanotechnology project. Desperate, she tried to reactivate the equipment, but the countdown reappeared. Terrified, Augie quickly shut it down. Meanwhile, Chen and Jack had entered the 3rd level of the game, set in the Qin dynasty. By the king's side were Newton and Turing. They planned to use calculus and a human computer to predict the sun's movements. At Newton's command, 3 million soldiers arranged themselves with boards displaying binary numbers. Within moments, they calculated that a chaotic era would begin in 3 days and last over 8 months, followed by a stable era lasting 10,000 years. The king, upon hearing this, expedited the dehydration process for his 30 million soldiers. The duration of the chaotic era confirmed Newton and Turing's calculations. However, the king accused Chen and Jack of being frauds and ordered them to be boiled alive. In their struggle, Chen tried to explain to the king that Newton and Turing's calculations lacked the initial parameters of the Trisolaran civilization. The king was unconvinced, so Chen accelerated time. As predicted, the short stable era ended with the appearance of the trinary alignment. Consequently, the king's 30 million soldiers were lifted into the air. Chen deduced this was due to the gravitational pull from the trinary alignment, causing everything on the ground to become weightless. Amid the chaos, the king killed Newton and Turing, leading to the destruction of the Grand Empire. Powerless to save the world, Chen realized that the game's goal might not be to save civilizations, but to help individuals within them survive. The swordswoman appeared again, stating that civilization numbered 184 was destroyed by the trinary alignment. However, Chen had discerned the game's true objective and thus advanced to the 4th level. Unbeknownst to Chen and Jack, the puppet master in the real world was printing their game records and handing them to Mike. After reviewing the records, Mike instructed his men to invite them to a summit in London. Alone in his room, Mike discussed the concept of fear with a mysterious figure from the world of Trisolaris. For the Trisolaran beings, fear was a shared emotion, but for humans, it was an individual experience. Mike noted that Earth's population increasingly lacked fear. The Trisolaran beings warned that the absence of fear could lead to extinction, and humans must relearn fear. Mike agreed and decided to take action. Not long after, Chen and Jack received invitations to participate in the fourth level of the game. Following the address on the invitations, they arrived at a certain location, where they were greeted by the mysterious woman who had once advised Augie to halt her experiments. The woman told them that all answers would become clear once they entered the fourth level of the game. With curiosity, Chen and Jack entered the game world, which this time was a desolate wasteland. The followers of the King of Shang dynasty had accelerated time, and amidst the rapid passage of time, the swordswoman revealed the truth to them. As Chen had suspected, no person or computer could predict the behavior of the Trisolaran world, as it was inherently chaotic. In the Trisolaran world, three suns interacted in such a way that each civilization met its end in disaster and destruction. Ultimately, the Trisolaran world would face a great catastrophe, where their planet would be torn in half or thrown into one of the suns, disappearing forever from the universe. To change the fate of their planet, the only solution was to flee their home and venture into the cosmos to find another habitable world. Since receiving the invitation from Earth, sent by Wen half a century ago, the Trisolarans had planned to descend upon Earth. Although they were 4 light-years away, decades ago, they had already dispatched an interstellar fleet composed of a single spaceship to traverse the universe. In the not-too-distant future, this fleet would reach Earth. After the game ended, the woman informed them that while some aspects of the game were fictional, the existence of the Trisolaran civilization and their advance towards Earth were real. Seeing Chen's hesitation, the woman recounted Chen's childhood story. As a child, Chen's parents had perished in a flood, and she had eventually moved abroad. The woman believed that Chen, having lost her home, would understand the Trisolaran's desire. Persuaded by the woman, Chen finally accepted the card handed to her, an invitation to a summit in London. At the same time, Jack remained skeptical, believing the Trisolaran civilization to be a mere hoax. However, upon returning home, Jack was confronted by the eerie presence of the mysterious woman. Before he could call for help, she killed him without human mercy. Strangely, the surveillance footage showed the woman mysteriously disappearing again, while the detective, who was tracking and protecting Jack outside, remained unaware. By the time the detective realized what had happened, it was too late. Jack was dead, and the killer had vanished. Through his time tracking and protecting, the detective had gathered a lot of information. He knew about Augie's encounter with the Countdown, and that Chen had been invited to the London summit. He informed both Chen and Augie of Jack's murder. Deeply saddened by the loss of their dear friend, they were determined to find out more. The detective learned that everyone attending the summit would join a mysterious organization, founded by people who wanted to connect with the Trisolarans and planned to hand over Earth to the aliens. To infiltrate and dismantle the organization, the detective's superior, Wade, suggested that Chen attend the summit as an undercover agent. This mission was not only about avenging her dead friend, but also saving Earth. Chen hesitated since she was a scientist, not a spy. However, after recounting her story and reflecting on her own experiences, Augie began to believe in the existence of the Trisolarans and encouraged Chen to go undercover. Comforted by her friend's support, Chen accepted Wade's proposal and set off for the summit that night. The detective followed closely, providing covert assistance and maintaining constant communication with Chen. Upon arriving at the destination, Chen's identity was confirmed through retinal scans before she was escorted into the summit venue. The venue was crowded with hundreds of people. The inviter, who had sent the invitation, embraced Chen and declared that this place would now be her home. Chen tried her best to remain calm. The person on stage began to speak, announcing the imminent arrival of the organization's founder. Chen stared at the stage in disbelief as the founder made their entrance. To her shock, it was none other than Wen, the seemingly kind and gentle mother of her late friend, Vera. Wen seemed unsurprised by Chen's presence and even walked over to greet her with a welcome. In fact, giving Chen the game helmet was part of Wen's plan to draw her into the organization. Wen stepped onto the stage, stood at the center of the Trisolaran symbol, and confidently explained the origins of the organization. In her view, the human world was beyond saving, and human civilization was on the brink of collapse. She believed that the Trisolaran civilization, a more advanced extraterrestrial society, would share their knowledge and save humanity from its doom. Wen also revealed that the Trisolarans would arrive on Earth in 400 years. Therefore, the organization's members needed to instruct their descendants to prepare for the Trisolaran arrival. As Wen spoke passionately, the detective and his team were ready to storm the venue. At the command, the assault team burst in, subduing everyone present. Two team members aimed to rescue Chen, but the inviter, realizing Chen was an undercover agent, raised her gun to kill her. Fortunately, the detective arrived just in time, shooting the inviter and saving Chen. After the chaos, all the attendees were arrested, but the injured inviter managed to escape. The organization members had hoped the Trisolarans would protect them, but a conversation between Mike and the Trisolarans before the summit had changed the minds of the Trisolarans. The detective's investigation revealed that Mike had a boat in the Mediterranean where at least 1,000 people lived. The detective suspected this boat, named the Judgment Day, was the organization's core base. He was right. The Judgment Day was home to thousands of Trisolaran believers who saw the Trisolarans as their saviors and referred to them as their lord. Mike and Wen's connection dated back over 40 years. Back in 1982, Wen, who had left the Red Coast base, became a physics professor at the university. During a business trip abroad, she contacted her old acquaintance, Mike. Despite the years, Mike had not changed much, still passionate about planting trees and protecting birds. Though he had inherited his father's oil company and become one of the world's richest men, Mike had also realized a crucial truth. To fight power, one must first embrace it. From their brief interaction, Wen knew Mike was still a kindred spirit. She confided in him about receiving extraterrestrial messages at the base and inviting the alien civilization to Earth. 2 years later, Mike built a second base on the Judgment Day boat, a research facility free from any official jurisdiction and equipped with all kinds of devices. Over the years, as Wen distanced herself from the Red Coast base, Mike took over, receiving countless messages from the Trisolaran world. When Mike invited Wen to the Judgment Day boat, she was overwhelmed with emotion. It was on this doomsday ship, symbolizing judgment and redemption, that their feelings for each other blossomed, culminating in a tongue massage. Together, they founded the Earth Trisolaran Organization, hoping to offer humanity a chance at salvation. Before the police dismantled the organization, the aging Mike believed the Trisolarans would continue to support them. He communicated with the Trisolarans as usual, telling them the tale of Little Red Riding Hood. However, the Trisolarans, who communicated through direct consciousness, did not understand metaphors or stories. Unlike humans, they were incapable of lying. They spoke exactly what they thought. This made them seem like super-intelligent alien AI. After several explanations, Mike managed to convey that the story was about deceit. He felt pleased, thinking the Trisolarans needed his help to understand human deception. But the Trisolarans, being straightforward, declared that liars could not be trusted, and they could not coexist with deceivers. Thus, Mike and his organization were abandoned by the Trisolarans, explaining why they did not intervene during the police raid. After successfully going undercover, Chen relayed the entire story of the Trisolaran civilization to Will, one of the Oxford Five. Will, suffering from cancer, did not have long to live. The organization was completely dismantled, and its founder, Wen, was arrested. However, Wen showed no fear in the face of the police and defiantly declared that humanity had no idea of the capabilities of the Trisolarans and could not prevent their arrival on Earth. The detective was in charge of interrogating Wen. Despite her arrest, Wen remained calm and claimed that everything was part of a divine plan. The detective tried to break down Wen's psychological defenses that Mike would not wait 8 years for a single message unless there was a faster means of communication, such as faster-than-light communication. However, humanity had not yet invented faster-than-light communication. In response, Wen answered nonchalantly, saying just because humans haven't invented it doesn't mean the Trisolarans haven't. Her words were like a bombshell. The Trisolaran interstellar fleet was set to arrive on Earth in 400 years. To defeat an enemy with far superior technology before the fleet's arrival, humanity needed to understand everything about the Trisolarans. According to investigations, Mike had kept records of communications with the Trisolaran world. Both the detective and his superior Wade believed that these records must be on the Judgment Day boat. However, getting close to the boat and obtaining the records would not be easy. At this critical moment, the detective thought of a plan. The boat was set to pass through the Panama Canal in a few days to reach a canyon. The detective planned to use nanofiber, sharp enough to cut through iron, to create pillars on both sides of the canyon. When the boat passed through, the nanofibers would slice the entire ship in half, including everyone on board. To execute this plan, the detective sought out Augie, who had developed the world's most advanced nanofiber technology. Initially, Augie refused to restart her work, but after a strong drink from the detective, she agreed to restart the production line. Strangely, the countdown numbers in front of Augie disappeared this time. The detective had guessed the reason because God had abandoned his flock. Just as the detective suspected, the Earth Trisolaris organization was abandoned by the Trisolarans because they were deemed liars. Meanwhile, Wade approached Raj, who served in the Royal Navy, to lead a group of naval engineers to construct the nanofiber pillars on both sides of the canyon. Coincidentally, Raj was Chen's boyfriend. Under Raj's leadership and Augie's technical expertise, the construction of the nanofiber pillars in the canyon was swiftly completed within a few days. However, Augie had concerns. Apart from Mike and a few senior members of the organization, there were thousands of innocent people on the boat. Using the nanofiber pillars would mean the death of all these innocent people as well. Raj and Wade were both resolute. Wade believed that sacrificing a few thousand people was nothing for the survival of humanity. Raj saw it from a broader perspective, understanding that this was not a massacre, but a war, and in war, adhering to humanitarianism would inevitably lead to defeat. Ultimately, Augie was persuaded by the two. The human resistance forces were ready to strike, while Mike, still oblivious to being abandoned by the Trisolarans, was unaware of his opponent's actions. On the day of the operation, the unsuspecting boat quietly sailed through the canal and into the canyon. The first to be cut in half was a sprinkler worker on the deck. Next, Mike's helicopter was sliced into scrap metal by the nanofibers. Then, one by one, the people on board were severed in an instant, and the ship was stained with blood. Mike fled to the basement but could not escape being cut in half. After extinguishing the fire on the boat, Wade found a red box on Mike's body. Upon decryption, the box was found to contain up to 100 GB of data. Additionally, Wade discovered a recording of Mike telling the Little Red Riding Hood story to the Trisolarans and played it for Wen. Upon hearing it, Wen was shocked. She could not believe that the entire human race, including herself, was no longer trusted by the Trisolaran civilization. After the incident, Wade summoned Chen. It turned out that among the staggering 100 GB of data, there was a conspicuous mention of the term Sophons. However, no one had yet been able to open any of the files within the data. Wade suspected that Sophons might be something beyond human comprehension, possibly from a higher dimension. Chen suggested they enter the game to find answers. Wade put on his helmet and joined the game as well. In the game world, the swordswoman explained the origins of the Sophons. The Trisolarans' interstellar fleet would take 400 years to reach Earth. However, because Earth was in a stellar system, every advancement in civilization would be a quantum leap. For example, humans evolved from the atomic age to the information age in just 50 years. By the time the Trisolarans arrived in 400 years, human science and technology would have far surpassed them. At that point, the Trisolarans' arrival on Earth would not be an expedition, but a death sentence. To prevent this inevitable tragedy, the Trisolarans decided to stifle human scientific and technological advancements in their cradle. The tool for this repression was the Sophon. A Sophon, also known as a proton, is one of the smallest particles in the universe. According to the swordswoman, the universe has multiple dimensions, but some of these dimensions are folded and hidden. The Trisolarans use technology to unfold these dimensions and harness unimaginable energy from the universe, concentrating it onto a single proton. Once unfolded, the proton possessed higher dimensions and could encompass and perceive everything in the world. In other words, it was a brain as large as the universe itself and endowed with consciousness. The protons thus created were called Sophons. The Trisolarans expended all their resources to create 4 Sophons. 2 were left on their home planet, and the other 2 were sent to Earth a few months ago. With these 2 superbrains, the Trisolarans continuously monitored and listened to humanity. Despite the light years separating the 2 civilizations, any message from Earth could be instantly detected by the Trisolarans, like sending a text message. Displayed the same message: "You are bugs." It was the voice of the Trisolaran civilization looking down on humanity from a godlike perspective. As this message appeared, the entire world was enveloped by the higher dimensional Sophon. The vast sky above replicated identical earthly scenes, and in the center of this celestial scene, a pair of glowing, enormous eyes like the eyes of God looked down on humanity with disdain. Following the Sky Eye incident, governments worldwide were forced to reveal the imminent Trisolaran invasion of Earth. Fear incited chaos, and millions took to the streets in protest. Some scoffed at the Trisolaran provocation, demanding the return of human dignity. Others viewed the Trisolarans as saviors, even forming new religions in their honor. Most ordinary people were plunged into despair. In this turbulent world, someone had to take the lead in resisting, and that person was Chen. The detective arranged for Chen to meet with Wen. When they met again, Chen had lost all respect for her predecessor. To Wen, her actions were meant to break the old world and create a new one. But to Chen, Wen was no longer a great physicist, but a traitor to all humanity. Amid humanity's crisis, Chen resolved to raise the banner and planned to resist the alien civilization to the end. Wade shared her resolve. Wade's plan was to launch probes to observe and intercept the Trisolaran fleet. However, after discussion, a group of scientists deemed his plan unfeasible. With current technology, it would take nearly 400 years for the probes to reach the Trisolaran star. Wade then proposed a bold and advanced idea: to have the probes travel at 1% of the speed of light, which was also the speed of the Trisolaran fleet. The scientists shook their heads again, stating that achieving 1% of light speed would take at least 100 years. Since the scientists could not achieve this, Wade turned to Chen. To counter the 2 Sophons sent by the Trisolaran, Wade ordered all particle accelerators worldwide to restart and operate around the clock, keeping the Sophons busy. But this was not enough. Chen proposed building a particle accelerator on the moon. This way, one Sophon would be preoccupied with the moon, and the other would struggle to keep up. Learning of Wade's plan to launch probes to intercept the Trisolaran, Chen expressed her support. She quickly came up with a stunning solution to the problem of achieving 1% light speed. The plan involved loading countless nuclear bombs at regular intervals onto a spacecraft and using radiation sails to propel the probe. Every time the probe passed a nuclear bomb, the explosion would accelerate the probe. After thousands of such explosions, the probe would achieve the desired speed. This process, resembling stepping upstairs in space, was called the ladder plan. Almost all the scientists present opposed this plan, but Wade supported it without hesitation. For humanity in deep crisis, any capability to contend with the Trisolaran had to be quickly deployed. Chen's boyfriend, Raj, learned of the plan and volunteered to join. Wade agreed and informed him of the plan's specifics. Raj's mission was to go to the moon, lead the construction of a base, and assemble ships capable of countering the Trisolaran. Due to the moon's low gravity, the ships built there would be larger. As a Navy officer with a strong sense of mission, Raj accepted the task without hesitation. On the other side, Chen arrived in a seaside town. After Jack's tragic death, the once inseparable Oxford 5 was now reduced to 4. Aside from Chen, the remaining 3 were temporarily staying in the town. Chen was there to find Augie. The planned radiation sail had to be made of nanomaterials, and Chen hoped Augie could help. However, Augie flatly refused. Since using nanofibers to kill everyone on a cruise ship in the canyon by the canal, Augie had been consumed by guilt. She was painfully aware that most of the people on that ship were innocent civilians. After being rejected, Chen went to the beach to talk with her friend Will. It was then that Chen learned that Will had cancer. His condition was worsening, and his life was slipping away. On the beach, Chen folded 2 paper boats, one representing Will and the other representing herself. She then released the boats into the sea, letting the waves carry them to unpredictable destinations. This was Chen's way of comforting Will. No matter what storms lay ahead, she would stay by his side until the end. Little did she know, Will had been secretly in love with her for many years. Feeling unworthy, he had never confessed his feelings. Recently, when he finally mustered the courage to reveal his feelings, he discovered that Chen already had a boyfriend. To preserve their precious friendship, Will decided to keep his feelings hidden. After visiting her friend, Chen returned to London and had an argument with her boyfriend, Raj. From Augie, she had learned that Raj was involved in the canal's nanofiber massacre. Unlike Augie, Raj felt no remorse. Instead, he believed he was participating in a grand war against alien invaders. In fact, what Chen was doing was essentially the same. Realizing the truth in his words, the couple eventually stopped arguing and embraced, a scene witnessed by the love-struck Will. Will had been gathering the courage to confess his feelings before his life ended, but seeing the couple so close, he chose to leave with a faint smile. Even though he couldn't confess, he had come to terms with it. Now, he only wished for Chen's happiness. To help her, Will worked hard to persuade Augie. He believed Chen wouldn't do anything wrong. Everything was for the greater good. Perhaps it was the weight of a dying man's words, but Augie was eventually convinced and joined Wade's team. Turning to the detective, he questioned Wen about the reason behind Vera's desperate choice. Wen frankly revealed that it was because her daughter, Vera, had discovered her communications with Mike. This was the last piece of information the detective obtained from Wen. Although she was arrested, Wen was not convicted and was released with orders for 24-hour surveillance. After her release, Wen returned home to pay her respects to her daughter and attempted to communicate with the Trisolarans. She knew well that the Trisolarans viewed Earthlings as deceitful. Now, the Trisolaran fleet was not coming to save Earth, but to annihilate humanity, which went against Wen's original intention. Despite her advanced age, Wen seemed to have one last ace up her sleeve for the impending catastrophe. At the same time, the latter plan encountered issues. The probes could not decelerate and could only travel at 1% of the speed of light in one direction. The Trisolaran fleet, moving at the same speed in the opposite direction, would give the probes just a few seconds to capture information from the enemy ships. But Wade had already made plans. Instead of attaching cameras to the probes, he intended to send a person along. Chen seemed to have some doubts about this plan. During this period, to raise funds for the interstellar war 400 years later, the government launched an initiative called the STARS Plan. The goal was to have the world's wealthy donate money, with the incentive that enough money could buy ownership of a star in the Silver River system. Fortunately, before Jack's death, he left half of his vast inheritance to Will. Now, Will intended to use this money to participate in the STARS Plan and buy a star for the girl he secretly loved. Will quietly purchased a star for Chen. He gazed up at the star, named DX3906, shining with a dim red light, satisfied with the thought that Chen could proudly say that star was hers when she looked at the sky. Immersed in his fantasy, Will suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed, leading to an emergency hospital admission. Chen received the certificate of ownership from the STARS Plan. Upon hearing that the star cost a staggering $19 million, she was incredulous and dismissed it as a prank, choosing to ignore it and rushing to an important meeting. At the meeting, a scientist introduced a newly developed hibernation pod. They had used antifreeze to protect a gorilla's cells, allowing it to survive in a pod at -150 degrees Celsius, reducing its metabolism to 1/1000th of normal. Wade, excited by the sight of the gorilla waking from hibernation, decided to enter hibernation himself, waking only 1 week each year to ensure the plan's success until the Trisolarans' arrival in 400 years. Chen didn't understand why Wade insisted on personally leading the plan instead of choosing a successor. Wade's cryptic response was, "Forward, only forward." Unable to grasp his meaning, Chen threw herself into her work. When she learned that Augie had developed a nanomaterial sail for the latter probe, she was delighted. But Wade brought bad news. They had only secured 300 nuclear bombs, insufficient to accelerate the 1-ton hibernation pod to 1% of light speed. Unless the human payload was reduced to 2 kilograms by creating a lighter pod, this task seemed impossible. Faced with this daunting challenge, everyone sighed in despair. Wade then proposed a chilling suggestion. Only the human brain should be placed in the hibernation pod. With Trisolaran technology, reconstructing a body would be a simple task. After all, the human essence is the brain, and the Trisolarans would undoubtedly be curious about the thoughts of a human brain. Wade had long set his sights on Chen's friend, Will. He was proficient in physics, chemistry, and rocket science, and was also suffering from terminal cancer. With not much time left to live, he seemed like the perfect candidate. Chen and Augie opposed Wade's proposal, insisting they couldn't end Will's life prematurely. However, Wade was indifferent to their concerns and began repeating his enigmatic phrase, "Forward, forward at all costs." At that moment, neither of them understood the meaning behind Wade's words. Augie, unable to accept Wade's devilish nature, angrily left the project. Wade returned to his office, contemplating the Trisolarans' inability to fathom human thoughts. He made a phone call, instructing his men to initiate the Wallfacer Project, which was a defense project enacted in an attempt to stop the Trisolaran invasion of Earth. Meanwhile, Chen visited Will in the hospital. She was surprised to see a fairy tale book at his bedside, astonished that he still kept it after all these years. Will inadvertently mentioned the specific date he received the book, causing Chen to awkwardly change the subject, reminding him to refuse Wade's proposal and not to participate in the latter plan. Will did not give a direct response. Instead, he praised Chen for the brilliant plan, believing it would secure her place in history. Will knew he was the perfect candidate for the latter plan. If he didn't go, the plan would face failure. Staring intently at Chen, Will wanted to understand her before he died. Chen's long-hidden feelings were revealed by Will's words, and she broke down, crying on him. Determined to help Chen, Will decided to join the latter plan. Wade arrived with an oath for him to sign, stating that all his actions henceforth would be in the best interest of humanity and that he would never harm humanity as a whole. Will refused to sign it, not feeling an obligation to be loyal to humanity. If the Trisolarans proved to be better, he would rather serve them. Wade took back the oath with a meaningful smile, asserting that Will was indeed the perfect candidate for the latter plan. He knew the Trisolarans, who were monitoring them, would be curious if Will's words were truthful. The opacity of human thoughts might be a weapon against the Trisolarans. Soon, Will's brain was to be extracted and put into hibernation. Before departing, Saul repeatedly asked if he was sure about this decision. Once his brain was captured, the Trisolarans would experiment on him, tormenting him with excruciating pain, even reviving him after death. It would be a fate worse than hell. But Will didn't care. Before his death, he took a deep look at the fish tank Chen had given him, watching a goldfish swim in the boundless water. Will could relate, feeling like he was on a paper boat, sailing alone in an ocean as vast as the universe. Chen couldn't bring herself to see Will off one last time. Wade came to inform her that the nuclear bombs were in place, casually mentioning the star Will had bought for her. Only then did Chen realize the star was a gift from Will. Overwhelmed with regret, she frantically ran to the hospital to stop Will, but it was too late. She could only watch helplessly as Will's brain was placed into the hibernation pod. Saul and Chen saw their friend off. Before they could grieve, Wen called Saul, inviting him to meet. She wanted to see the friend her daughter had mentioned as the smartest among them. Wen intentionally shared a joke with Saul. After that, Wen bid farewell to Saul. She knew that after speaking to Saul, the Trisolarans wouldn't tolerate her existence any longer. She made her final visit to the Red Coast base, reminiscing about her earlier days there. Now, the base was abandoned. As she walked to the cliff edge, the mysterious woman interrupted her, offering to make her passing more peaceful. The mysterious woman had reconnected with Sophon as the Trisolarans needed her help. Unaware of Wen's fate, Saul, having spent a passionate night with a stranger, leisurely explained his views to her. He wasn't worried about the Trisolaran invasion 400 years later, believing he wouldn't live to see Earth's destruction. The woman, enraged by Saul's irresponsibility, was about to retort when a sudden car crash killed her instantly. The detective arrived and informed Saul that the vehicle had been meant to hit him, but a child had accidentally bumped into him, sparing him. Shockingly, the car's computer had been hacked, activating its autopilot to deliberately target Saul. The detective demanded to know what Wen had said to make the Trisolarans so intent on targeting him and even leading to her murder. Saul was baffled. The detective sighed, instructing him to put on a bulletproof vest and follow him. The detective escorted Saul to the airport, where they were guarded by fully armed special forces and even fighter jets. Saul boarded a private plane bound for New York. Saul arrived at the United Nations headquarters. When he was brought to the meeting of the Planetary Defense Council, he was still groggy and confused. He had no choice but to sit down and listen to the UN chairwoman read about the Wallfacer Project to counter the Trisolarans. The Wallfacer Project was designed to exploit the Trisolarans' inability to understand human thinking. Despite the fact that Sophons could monitor every action on Earth at any time and place, they couldn't read human minds. The Wallfacer Project capitalized on this flaw, selecting 3 Wallfacers who were granted supreme authority to devise and lead humanity's strategic plans. The specifics of their plans would remain solely in their minds, not to be shared with anyone until the time of execution. As long as the Wallfacers did not violate international law, they would not need to explain their actions or orders, no matter how incomprehensible they might seem. Soon, the chairwoman announced the 3 Wallfacers, a general who was renowned for his conflict resolution skills and battles against ISIS in Raqqa, the battle hero lady known for her victories against overwhelming odds, and finally, Saul himself. Saul's mind buzzed as he stumbled to the stage. After the meeting concluded, he resigned as a Wallfacer on the spot, unwilling to fight for humanity's future. To his surprise, the chairwoman agreed to his request, letting him leave with a knowing smile. Saul didn't think much of it and left the UN building, only to be shot as soon as he stepped outside. Fortunately, the detective had made him wear a bulletproof vest in advance, saving his life. Saul wanted to see the shooter, and the detective agreed without hesitation. The shooter was brought before Saul, who lamented that he hadn't aimed for the head to complete his mission and free Saul from being a Wallfacer. Saul angrily told him that he had already refused all the rights granted by the UN. The shooter didn't reply, only giving Saul the same eerie smile as the chairwoman. A chill ran down Saul's spine as he realized the implication of that smile. Once you become a wall facer, you can never escape its constraints. No matter how bizarre your actions, people would see them as part of the wall facer plan against the aliens, since no one could guess what was in your mind. Resigned, Saul approached the chairwoman, puzzled as to why the UN had chosen someone as obscure as himself to be a wall facer. The chairwoman admitted she didn't know either, but seeing the Trisolarans targeting Saul suggested that he must possess something threatening to them, something he had to discover for himself. Before leaving, the chairwoman assigned her capable assistant to help Saul with any needs. Saul took the opportunity to request a trip to the launch center to send Will into space. Saul was taken to the launch base to meet Chen. Together they watched as their friend's brain was sent into space. As the countdown ended, the rocket carrying Will's brain soared into the universe. The launch was successful, but there were still a few hours until the capsule reached the first nuclear explosion point. Saul accompanied Chen for a walk by the sea. He envied Chen for having someone like Will who loved her deeply. Chen remained silent, regretting that she had sent Will into space, but it was too late. All she could do was plead with Wade to include seeds of Will's favorite food in the capsule, hoping the Trisolarans would clone them along with Will so he could eat his hometown food when he was revived. Before long, the capsule was about to reach the detonation point. The radiation sail successfully deployed, and the precise nuclear explosion propelled the sail to accelerate wildly. After passing through 3 explosion points, a cable securing the capsule snapped after the 4th explosion, causing the capsule to veer off course and drift into deep space. The mission had failed. Chen's eyes reddened instantly, realizing that Will might now drift through space for countless years. The staircase project failed, leaving Wade to focus his efforts on the wall facer project. On his private jet, Wade saw the media criticizing the wall facers, accusing them of wasting resources. Suddenly, a Sophon appeared on the screen opposite him. It admired Wade as a powerful leader, but now his plans had become a threat to the Trisolarans. As the Sophon finished speaking, Wade saw a countdown in his eyes, and then a vision of himself with his eyes gouged out. From that moment on, he would face endless torment from the Sophon until the day he died. In the evening, the detective saw Saul and Chen feeling dejected. He took them for a drive along the coast. The sky was just beginning to lighten, and a swarm of tiny bugs flew into the air. The detective comforted them, saying that even though these bugs were small and weak, no matter how many ways humanity tried to eradicate them, they still survived. They were impossible to eliminate completely, just like humanity in the face of the Trisolarans. With that, Season 1 of this drama comes to an end. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.